But let's switch to the UK, where the Keir Starmer government seems to be more perturbed by the world's richest man, Elon Musk, shining a light on the grooming gang scandal than the fact that thousands of vulnerable girls were assaulted, were raped by mainly Pakistani Muslim men who were allowed for years to act with impunity due to political correctness. Douglas, we saw the rule of law, we saw common decency sacrificed in the name of community cohesion and cultural sensitivity. Has the UK now learnt its lesson? Could the grooming gang scandal happen again?
Oh, of course it could happen again because the UK hasn't learned any lessons from it. And that's because, again, just like I was saying about the institutions in America, in Britain, it's not just the two-tier policing system that Keir Starmer has overseen since coming into office. It's the fact that the police, local councillors, local councils, MPs, and others have all overseen this. And they've all overseen this. And it required, perhaps, Elon Musk and a few other high-profile accounts in America to pick up on this and say, oh, hang on, guys, what is it you've allowed to go on here? For people to actually realize again in Britain what this was, which was the biggest sexual crime carried out in modern British history, all not just under the noses of, but in front of the faces of all the relevant authorities. And, at the moment, the big grandstanding thing to do is to call for a full public inquiry into this. The truth is, there are plenty of public inquiries that have been taken place into these rape gangs, and nothing ever really changes that much because nobody asks answers which they don't want. Sorry, nobody asks questions rather that they don't want answers to, and the answers to this are, as I said in The Spectator this week, pretty straightforward, actually. They're that if a man is found to have been grooming, raping, gang raping, molesting women or underage girls, that person should go to prison for a very long time. And if they have dual nationality, they should be chucked out of the UK. They should have their British nationality withdrawn and they should be deported. Now, most of these men should be deported back to Pakistan, but the immigration system in Britain is so rotten that, as I mentioned again in The Spectator this week, a number of the men who were released from prison early used the time to appeal against their deportation and used that time to give up their Pakistani citizenship so they could stay in the UK, because it takes so long to get people out of the UK. And in the end, nobody does get sent out of the UK. Oh, and then a couple of cases where people actually were able to be returned to Pakistan. Shock and horror, the Pakistani government didn't want more gang rapists in Pakistan, so they didn't receive them back. Well, any sensible government should say, you know what, Pakistan, we give you millions of pounds a year in foreign aid, as does our ally, the United States of America. You'll take your citizens back. You'll take them back. Otherwise, you can say bye-bye to any foreign aid or anything else. But, none of that is coming from the government, and too little of it, in my view, is coming from the opposition either. They're all fixated on this. Let's have years of inquiries. Inquiries don't matter a damn when what happens is, at the end of it, the inquiry is shelved, the person who's done the inquiry is thanked, and nothing changes.
It is just so shocking, and I'm glad at least the American attention is seeing the British public look at this again, because I was shocked. I wrote a lot about it at the time, 7-8 years ago. This is in my mind, the greatest scandal in modern British history, and people treated it like it was nothing. It was something that was worthy of a few headlines, and when we get on with life. And I don't think they've really examined how this happened, what it says about modern British culture, and the bureaucracy there. I mean,
absolutely, you're quite right. I mean, it's just astonishing. And as I say, it's partly because this is one of those stories that runs straight against the credo of our time in countries like Britain, and I'd argue Australia, most of Europe, and Canada, and other places as well. And the credo is diversity is our strength. Diversity is our strength. The more diverse we are, the better we are. and the societies that we're in were desperately boring, bland places until we brought some diversity into it. And, there's something to be said for the diversity argument, but not everything to be said for it. In fact, there are some things to be said against it. There are some times when you don't want to be more diverse. There are certain bits of diversity you don't really need. You don't really want, I would argue, hundreds of thousands of people potentially who have 7th century attitudes towards women being imported into your society and being told to just get on with it and being allowed to get on with it. And that's the problem for the authorities in all of this, is that, for all of the police awareness diversity days and all the council diversity is our strength days, the rape gangs case showed there are actually downsides to diversity. There are negatives to it as well. And they didn't want to admit to that. They couldn't admit to it because there'd be a follow-on question, which would be, what are you going to do about it? And so they just ducked it. And they hoped, in the immortal words of that tweet that Labour MP Naz Shah briefly retweeted and then took down, that the raped girls of Rotherham should, quote, shut up for the sake of diversity. They should shut up for the sake of diversity. No, some of us, like you and me, Rita, always said that was wrong. These girls should have been listened to and their complaints should have been acted upon. If anyone doubts that there is a double standard in modern Britain, as in many other Western liberal democracies these days, you just need to ask one question. What would have happened if it had been the other way round? What would have been the result if gangs of white working class men had been singling out underage Muslim Pakistani girls and gang raping them? Would we have passed it over? Would we have said that's a bit too awkward to talk about it? Would the police have just allowed it? Would the local councils have allowed it? Would the Pakistani community in Britain have allowed it? The answer to all of these things is, of course not. You just need to turn it the other way round, and you see the two-tier system in Britain at the moment, as in so many countries, because we cannot cope with the situation that generations of politicians have handed us.
Douglas Murray, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Great to see you, Rita.